Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the weekly State of the Game podcast for the Greenskin Gaming Sunday Miners multiplayer in EU4. Today, I am joined by M-Hop and Swirtfair.
Hello, boys.
Hello there.
Well, I think we had a pretty interesting session last week. What would you guys say?
Definitely. While the action wasn't, actually action, no, nobody fought any wars against nobody, player wars at least. There was a lot of diplomatic action going on in Europe at least, hopefully also in Middle East and Asia.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a setup for this session. Just the sheer amount of diplomacy that went on last session was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, I think it's the calm before the storm, you could say, because absolutism has hit the battlefield. And I think a lot of countries are going for cut and country right now and are preparing their late game alliances, late game boxes, and their late game builds. So I think in around 2 or 3 in-game years, we are going to see the first major PvP wars. Because Yemen, for example, is in cut and country right now, and I think a lot of other countries will join as well.
Where do you think that first spark is going to fly, out of curiosity?
That's an interesting one. I think it will most likely include Prussia, and I'm not sure against who. Because I think Prussia right now is uncontested the best army in the world. They have a 1.2 morale advantage above everyone in the game, which is sick at this point. Because we're not that far into the game, and their discipline is the highest in the world right now. No, one of the second highest, only bested by Japan. And they are higher because they can still enact the policy. So they have the highest morale and the highest discipline in the world, and they are going to finish innovative ideas soon. So I think Prussia will most likely take on, for example, Tyrol. I think Tyrol, because Tyrol right now has a lot of attractive land for him, because right now he's looking to funnel his trade into Lubeck, and if he's getting Vienna, he's getting a lot of trade power in the trade node, and if he gets a trade of Austria proper and, for example, Transdanubia, the capital area of Hungary, up into Westphalia, into the Saxony trade node, and then works out a deal with you or Morton, Mhoppe, and then he will be even more rich than he is right now. He's making some good numbers, like 50 plus. And I think it will grow quite big in the future, because I think that if you consider removing Sweden, he will be so rich that he will most likely be out of control for Yemen or Andalusia in like 20 years, because then Western Tech Group, in combination with his idea set and his idea set choices, are way too much for him.
Yeah, I think we're just going to see Prussia scale up like dramatically, like you said, in the next 10 to 50 years. I think like he's got to kill Sweden. One thing I will mention that I do find amazing about what Prussia's done is Riga reformed into Kurland, which is just mind blowing. It's awesome, and they're still a subject of Prussia. And it's so rare you actually see Kurland on the map.
Yep, and I think he said he wanted to keep him around, to give him Finland, just to maybe just appreciate the fact that it actually exists at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we all just must bask in the glory that is Kurland, because you never see it ever unless you're playing it like specifically.
It's one of the rarest decks in the game.
Indeed, it is. Some strong ideas as well. They got discipline, and I think they also got something about colony. I can't remember if it's a colonist or if it's
they
like
have a tendency to take explore ideas.
All right. But that makes.
I think it's a global settler increase, I believe, is what they get in their ideas. Like it's a plus 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Might be very correct. I'm not sure either. What I do think is interesting, though, about
they have no gains.
Prussia.
They have no additional gains.
Prussia and their situation is that he's obviously the strongest power in Europe, but he's not. He could easily be ganked if, say, as what Svat said before about Prussia attacking Tyrol. If he does that, and he would probably win the war because of Tyrol's diplomatic situation with all this request expansion, he can't ally anyone. So that's kind of tough for him. I think a lot of nations in Europe would kind of frown upon Prussia's actions because then he would be, uncontested by far. So I think Prussia is wary of the fact that he can't stretch it too far because he will putting the target on his back by doing so. So I think he's trying to fly low, maybe either set up some fights in Europe or maybe outside of Europe, so maybe better situation that way.
I think it's already too late for him to really stop him because his only problem right now is manpower and money because his army is by far the strongest. I think if he actually wants to go ham on the other nations and he still gets support from the big economic powerhouses of Europe, I think no one will be able to stop him in Europe at least. But I think if he attacks Tyrol, what I suspect to be the first war, I think we will see an intervention from Yemen or Andalusia, money-wise, because I think Tyrol is one of the strongest techs in Europe left. They're weaker than Westphalia or the Netherlands, for example, but they got a pretty good area to defend on. And I think if Prussia is going into a long war, it could slow them down enough for Yemen or Andalusia to gain enough power and support to take down Prussia. Because we got the Palatinate and Westphalia who are strong idea-wise and soldier-wise, but not on Prussia level. But they are the closest to actually contest Prussia in Europe. Because I don't think the Netherlands or Ireland have any interest in fighting them. I don't suspect Greece to do it. And Ikayanlu is too far away. So I doubt that anyone but Tyrol or Westphalia can stand this test right now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I honestly though, I think we're gonna be seeing the first sparks fly in Anatolia over the Hudvengar state on the far side of the strait there, because Greece needs that if he wants to reform Byzantium, as well as I believe the fortress of Sugla. So there's been quite a bit of tension down there already with Dutch coming back into Ryazan next session, which I do believe he is. I think we might actually see some movement on that front, to be honest. I think that's where the first sparks will fly, personally.
It could be another big one, because I just realized that Greece is allied with Prussia, and with the support of Prussia, it could be a kind of easy deal for Greece to fight. Greece has a 27 galley fleet right now. For comparison, Ikayanlu has a fleet of 29 heavy ships right now, so I doubt that Ikayanlu will let them over the strait, but I think if that happens, it will turn into a world war, because right now Ikayanlu is allied to Ming, and as far as I know, they are still on really friendly relations with Yemen, and they are really rich right now. They have a total income of 172 ducats, which is kind of good. Considering beforehand, I thought the Ikayanlu player was not doing the best job he could have done, but I think he really recovered in the last sessions, and he grew to be a powerhouse. I think he still exists to the grace of Yemen, but besides that, I think he is the second strongest player in the Middle East area, even stronger than Persia right now.
Yeah, for sure. Just with that economic might, I can't I'm not looking at the save, so you guys, I need the details from you guys. But just hearing that economic might, I mean, money makes the world go round, as we all know in EU4. So he who controls the money can control the outcome of many things.
For sure, man. And that's also the major strength of the Middle Eastern alliance. As we talked about earlier, Prussia has a 1.2 morale advantage over AQ and Yemen. But AQ and Yemen both earn way more than Prussia does, if I remember correctly, with Yemen earning maybe 3 times as much. So, if it ever came to a massive war between Europe and Middle East, I think we see the Middle Eastern, just bankrolling, just pumping out mercs with Europe kind of relying on the Prussian morale to just like carry them through the skirmishes.
Hey, I mean, don't forget about the Irish morale. I think it's at like 6.2 right now.
Let me check. The Irish morale. Oh well, you're not paying your units right now. That's why you're not showing up.
Because I'm broke, man.
Bad Ireland not paying his troops.
I'm paying Prussia. Have you seen the amount of subsidies I'm paying to the strongest military power in Europe?
Let me check how high
your morale is 6.2, yeah. But right now the Yemenite and AQ is 6.81. They do both have the relentless drill modifier right now, though, so that might drop below the 6.2 limit afterwards. So that's a strong one as well.
Yeah, I just need to really finish. Like, I think I might be able to get an advisor, but I just kind of need to consolidate the British Isles and then catch up on things, and that's pretty much my plan for the next session.
Yeah, I think you will grow even stronger when you finish your ideas, because you're not finished with economic or trade. And once you finish them and you get your finished idea set, you will get the 5% discipline from Irish ideas and the 0.5 yearly Republican tradition, which is really, really strong.
Oh, it's so
and
good.
At that point, I think Ireland will become a major player in European politics, even more than it already is. Because right now, I think they get a bit overshadowed by the Netherlands. But I think once the ideas are finished, the Netherlands will be the lesser evil of the trade nations in Europe.
I mean, I can't really say too much about the Diplo that he and I have done, but basically, Netherlands and I are bros. That's all I can throw out there. We're bros.
Well, that also makes perfect sense. It secures your mainland holdings while also keeping like a naval power at your like side to protect your island over there, which is a smart move.
Oh yeah, I mean the Irish Navy's nothing to scoff at currently. I just need to throw some light ships out, or more light ships, I should say.
Into the English Channel, man. Get all that trade.
Dude, throw them everywhere.
Yep. I think for that matter, Europe is most likely seeing some big wars in the future. Andalusia got really big, like the power of Africa has finally shown up to the dining table of Europe. They're allied to Sicily. Sicily will most likely get subbed in, as far as I know, or will be protected for the session. And with the current ruler of Andalusia, a 654, and the heir with 563, I think they are on a really strong position right now to maybe attack the Palatinate or attack Greek and take over Italy in combination with Sicily. And at that point, I think Andalusia may be one of the players who find themselves in a player war right now, because I think Fred has quite big ambitions to win this session right now.
Yeah, I could agree for sure. I mean, I don't want to downplay what he's done so far in this season, but he hasn't fought a player war yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
He hasn't, but you don't need to forget that he, unlike most of the other people, wasn't kind of forced to. He is like the one who's in the dark right now, the dark horse, because no one is expecting him to say, "Sup, it's time for the Spanish Inquisition," but he isn't. He has enough power to do the Spanish Inquisition on Europe.
Wouldn't it be the Andalusian Inquisition? I don't mean to cut you off, but we gotta get the terminology right.
It's the Muslim Spanish Inquisition, the Andalusian way.
Bum bum bum.
No one expects the Spanish Andalusian Inquisition.
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well, though.
Yeah, but I think Andalusia will be big in the next session, because Andalusia and Yemen should do their moves now, or otherwise they will simply get outscared by Prussia. And I think they did at least Cookie and Yemen did a lot of barking towards Europe. Like, I will destroy the hack box or the cuddle cube of Europe. I will destroy them. But I think it's time that he let actions do their work instead of empty words.
Yeah, I mean, it's time to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Cookie, this is a direct shout out to you. I challenge ye, sir. Come at us, brethren.
I would very much like to see that as well, especially because it will be such an epic battle to have like a AQ and a Yemen fight against a united Europe. It will be hella fun.
Be
Also,
glorious.
added to that is that I think my idea of the European politics right now is that it's mostly united because the second a war breaks out in Europe, I would expect a Middle Eastern power, AQ, to attack Greece and then enter into Europe. And there's like a strong consensus in Europe right now that nobody really wants to see that happening. So, it's kind of iffy to predict what's going to happen because I know a lot of European players do want to, all of them want to expand, of course. And, I think we're solely out of AI at this point to engage in, at least in the northern part of it. So wars are bound to happen if players want to expand, but there's also like the looming threat is just like pouncing in from both the west in form of Andalusia and the east in form of AQ and Yemen.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting for sure, but I think we have we've talked about the Middle East and Europe enough. I mean, minus Persia. We'll touch on Persia quickly, but Orisa died. That's a thing that happened last session. I heard that.
They did, and the sad part of that is that it's just going to be a lot of free development for the Persia player and the Yemen player as well. Maybe also the Hessenwi player actually coming in from the east over there, the Far East.
Yeah, now we do need to mention briefly that the Hessenwi player is a relocation from Switzerland. Switzerland, as you can see, is no longer on the map. They no longer exist. Press F for Switzerland. I don't want to see the comment section filled with nothing but Fs, though, so like leave it on one comment. Reply to one comment. Don't do that to me.
So, interesting point is that I think no one from the European players saw the surprise coming from a specific nation in Asia called Hessenwi. Sorry for me slaughtering the spelling. But I think I know the plan, but there will be a tasty, nasty surprise for European players because I know he's salty as hell at Europe and he wants to slaughter Prussia. And he got a plan. And the plan will be glorious if it happens. Like, I think right now he's pretty small with 28 total income. But once he finishes Ayutthaya War and then slaps Orisa around with the support of Japan and maybe Japan, his plan will be a pain in the ass for the Europeans to deal with because his tactics are dirty. He's not fighting a fair fight, but a good fight.
Well, I'd challenge him as well. I'd like to see this. I am excited to see all this Diplo come to fruition finally so we can have something happen. I mean, some action would be lovely. I mean, we also have a Japan player, though. That's the thing. Like, and she started out as Susui, very small, and in like 2 sessions just absolutely exploded as Japan. So hats off. Hats off to our Japan player.
Note that it was not a 1444 start for her. She was starting in Japan afterwards. So it's even harder to unite Japan in a short time. And I think it's really impressive. Like the players I'm most impressed in with the current season is the Palatinate player, Mac Panties, who did a really good job in the last session to continue expanding. I was not expecting him. I was expecting him to die the last session, kinda. The second one is Ika Yonlu, which recovered and got really, really strong. Shoutouts to him. And the third player is the Japan player who just grew out of control. And I think she won't make a big impact in European politics for the next years. But I think if she gets alone for like a future 50 years, there could be like a colonization of Europe from Japan.
That would be really fun to see because I'm going to be honest. I heard you told something about Hessenwi wanting to attack Europe, maybe Japan coming in as well. I can't see that happening for the sole reason that it's so far away. It's a hell of a fight. You have to land an insane number of troops if you actually want to conquer something as an Eastern player, or like alternatively march across China, Central Asia, all that into Europe. I'm sad to say it, but even though it would be funny to see, I'm not expecting it to happen.
Neither
It
am I,
will.
honestly, but it would be glorious if, say, like, I don't know, Andalusia sold Japan some islands so they had, like, a staging area.
I could totally see that happen.
I could as well, that's why I said it.
And
Like,
I
I
think it
think it
would be
will
nice
happen.
because I think they can. I think they can pull it off because their armies are so strong and their economic power base is strong as well. And I think Ming will die the next session because Persia and Yemen had a failed war against Ming. It was not planned or not intended to, but I think once Ming is dying, Japan will grow out of control in combination with assembly. And at that point, I think Japan has the economic power combined with the insane Japanese ideas to fight Europe. And I think if Europe loses Prussia somehow, I don't think Europe will stand a chance against the economy of Japan. Because Europe may be strong military wise, like Westphalia is a powerhouse. I have one of the finest soldiers in the world. But the problem is economy, as they are kind of limited in expansion against the AI at this point. They can't grow out of control. And the Chinese land is so rich. Like, if you can take it for next to free, why not? And at that point, you can just farm away Ming while indirectly supporting problems in Europe. And if Europe explodes, you are the winner because you can abuse that. And at that point, we hit late game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I honestly think we're going to see Japan end up top 3 at the end of the season, without a doubt in my mind. The way she's handled her nation thus far, just, yeah, without a doubt in my mind, she'll end up in the top 3 if she continues on this path.
Yeah, it's a good idea to maybe rank top threes.
Yeah,
For the
now that we're
future.
like, was this the 5th session in?
I think, but I'm not sure again. It's always like a question in my mind.
We got the age of absolutism now, so players are on the dining table now.
Yeah, but what I will like, if I had to enter, let Japan enter into my top 3 picks, it would be on the like only if Andalusia or Yemen dies, or just drops a lot of score because it's occupied. The witchery cards there, but because the fact that the Japan player entered late gives them a minus 25 deficit we run on the score, which is kind of hefty. Not that much, obviously, but still something. But my point is that Yemen is massive, and if Yemen wants to maybe get that Chinese or Japanese trade, I think the Yemen player will just come in and get it because I don't think anybody in Asia can stop Yemen at this point. Also, because of the fact that during the last session, Yemen moved bought some provinces off of AQ, so he could place his capital in Europe, which meant he could create a
Trade company.
exactly in India, obviously also in Indonesia down there.
That's
And
disgusting.
yeah, who's to say he won't make one in Ming as well? South China, East China, all that, and he could steer. I think his income right now is 360. Yeah, could jump up to maybe $1,000 from all the trade you could pull from over there.
I don't even want to think about that. That's just like a disgusting amount of income.
It is, and my point is that Yemen could go ahead and get that if Yemen just wanted to see the Japan player dead. If he at some point deemed the Japan player a threat score wise. So I'm not sure I'm going to see the Japan player enter into my top 3 predictions.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot that we actually had a 25% score reduction for joining late. I thought it was only for respawns. That was my bad. But I still think we'll see Japan at least top 5 then, even with that 25% reduction.
It might actually make sense. You can obviously make arguments for both sides. I would still say, though, that my top predictions would probably still not include Japan, I would say.
We'll have to see.
I can make the start with my top 3 prediction. I think the winner of this session will be Prussia with Skand. Like, I think Skand is salty as hell at Cookie, at the Yemen player, because of the last majors session, because Cookie stole away his win, and so Permafrost won the game.
Actually, Cookie stole my win. I hate to cut you off.
Cookie
stole my win.
Yeah, and I think this combination of influences from other games could lead to Prussia winning, because I don't see Yemen beating Prussia in a straight up 1v1 fight. Because if Yemen is actually going full ham with the pseudo nation ruining, going at like 40 or 50 corruption and full loans. I think Andalusia will just pound him and kill off Yemen with truce breaks at this point, or Japan abuses that. And on the second place, I would expect Frede in Andalusia, because right now his power base is strong. I think he will grow even stronger. Maybe he will even form France. I could see him do it, like with converting his provinces to trade companies. And on the third place, I would suspect either Akayonlu or Yemen, because I think Yemen won't win the war against Prussia. Otherwise, Yemen will end up first. And if Yemen dies, Akayonlu will be the biggest gainer from it. So Akayonlu is a big contestant for the top 3 in my eyes, with Cookie, of course. And don't forget about Japan. But I think Japan is the biggest what if, right? Maybe they stay isolated and farm up AI and just influence Europe and the Middle East for money. We don't know for sure, but I think it will be interesting for the next.
Agreed.
I maybe could, I don't agree with that actually, or some of that at least. Andalusia, I don't see entering into the top charts simply because if you look at the Andalusian army quality compared to the Prussian, obviously, there's a huge gap there, and that cannot be mended by his really like the near future. He's running exploration, economic, quality, and offensive. Obviously, that's very strong, but there's no defensive, and he doesn't have morale in his ideas. And morale is going to be super important at this stage in the game. Say if Prussia wants to push Andalusia back, he attacks and comes out of him with like a maybe 2.5, I don't know, advantage in morale, which is obviously, I would say unbeatable, especially because I think the Prussian force limit is at around like 80. I'm not sure. And the Andalusian one is 150, I think. So while that's a huge gap, I don't think it's enough to actually beat back a Prussian alliance in the north there.
Their force limit is around 80 right now, but you don't forget about the fact that his next idea may be offensive or quantity, and at that point his force limit is growing a lot.
That's my point. My point is that Andalusia, I can't see Andalusia anything like win in a European or against the Europeans. I think his best bet would be to do a diplomatic solution, or maybe ally with Akyanlu or Yemen over there. I'm not sure. My point is that the Andalusian army quality is way worse than the Prussian, so I can't see Andalusia like gaining and going into France that way. I would say, though, that I agree with you having Prussia as number one. Obviously, that morale is just insane, and it's hard to counter at any point in the game for all nations. Second place, though, is rather interesting. No, I haven't had Cookie enter into my scoreboards yet, but I probably will at this point. It's inevitable at this point in the game. So he's going to be my second pick. And then my third pick is going to be maybe the Orthodox, but let's say... I don't know. Depends on how much score they accumulate, but Ireland or Tyrol could definitely accumulate some nice score later in the game. I would say so.
Makes sense. I think I don't think mine are really gonna change too much, honestly. I think I'm gonna agree with you guys. Prussia number one. I am gonna go with Andalusia number two, simply because of his already accumulated score at this point, and then. Probably Yemen 3, but I am also going to tag like two dark horse players that I think really could make an impact in the next 100 years, and that's obviously Japan. But I think if Dutch comes back to Ryazan, and the deals have been worked out and if the deals work out to where he can actually form Russia, I think honestly Dutch is going to have a massive impact in the late game just because of those ridiculous Russian ideas. I mean, while his troops won't be great, they're just going to be like a ridiculous amount of them.
The Turks of Russia. I think his problem is right now that he is way too far behind in ideas. Otherwise, I would agree. And if he forms Russia, I can see him, if he finishes idea set and then picks up quality as the next idea, I see him actually becoming the only real nation who can challenge Prussia on a 1v1 level. Because the strategy, in combination with the 10% morale event that Russia is getting in the 70-hundreds, they can fight Prussia. It's not like they're better than Prussia, but they are the closest from ideas to actually challenge Prussia.
Agreed. I mean, that's why I'm tagging Dutch and Ryazan as a potential dark horse player, because he definitely does have the potential to influence European politics in the not too distant future. Like you said, though, providing he can get caught up on ideas and tech and make sure he gets Russia formed and just get everything sorted out with his nation.
Definitely. And, what I take away from this conversation and like talking about who's going to win the game, I know there's been a lot of like talked about the game already set in stone, with Eastern Alliance versus the Western Alliance. I'm not so sure about that. I think what I get from the analysis we made here is like, a lot of things can still happen. Europe could burst into war. The Middle East could burst into war. Japan and his enemy might come for Europe. We hear, all these things just combined makes it, even though the last session had no wars, like the future ones are just going to be bursting, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see another super peaceful session like this for the rest of the season. I don't see it happening after all the Diplo that was done last session and all the preparations that were made.
Exactly, and it's just there's too many tension at this point. There's no way to expand for all of Europe and Middle East. They have to do something about their like constant barking at Europe. They have to attack us at some point at this stage in the game. And Delusia has creeped far into Europe. All these things combined, just makes it so like it's gonna erupt at this point.
Yeah, there's gonna be some brutal wars in the next 100 years, no doubt in my mind.
And a lot of salt coming with it.
That's to be given, though, with any player war, right? I mean, Leonix was pretty salty when we killed him off in Holland. That's just to be expected, though.
Yeah, and obviously Switzerland as well was kind of salty. Nitra was salty. Tyrol was initially was salty. Yeah, all this. It's just a matter of fact in EU4, and it's part of the game, and it's obviously quite entertaining. Also makes it a bit more dynamic, at least in the future games, as players continue to gain all these kind of experiences. Who's trustworthy? Who isn't trustworthy? Who's gonna backstab you? Who's gonna explode into like a volcano of violence at the late game? All these things are gonna make both the future sessions and future games just so much more enticing.
Oh, absolutely. Don't forget about those random people who just might front stab you instead of backstab you. Don't forget about that.
I'm gonna keep my eyes open at this point.
Well, Sword, do you have any more comments you want to make? Because I do believe we've pretty well covered everything, other than the fact Andalusia owns the New World. Now we've covered that. Moving on. So nothing? Nothing? All right. Well, yeah, I think that is where we are going to go ahead and wrap up the weekly state of the game for the Greenskin Gaming Sunday Miners Multiplayer of EU4. Once again, I am your host, ORie. I have been joined by Swirtfair, who is muted right now and hasn't said anything for the last couple minutes, but that's okay, and M-Hop. So, yeah, kind of butchered this outro. I don't know why, but things happen. Anyway, we are just going to go ahead and wrap this up here. As always, if you guys have enjoyed, please do drop a like down below, as it really helps the channel out, and subscribe for more Grand Strategy content in the future. I'm your host, ORie. Once again, I've been joined by Swirt and M-Hop, and we will see you guys in the next one.